We are joined by our senior counsel for global affairs, the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, we're starting to see how the influx of migrants are affecting Americans deep inside the country, not just on our southern border, but into cities across the country. And this, of course, a lot of this is in light of the expiration of Title 42 and no laws that Senate Democrats not wanting to pass any laws that would extend this similar kind of power to the Biden administration. They voted against it. Now we've got a report that homeless veterans are being cleared out of temporary housing to make way for incoming migrants. I mean, it doesn't seem like you could do anything worse to those who served our country, who find themselves in a tough situation, being homeless at the time, trying to get out of that situation, and they're kicked to the curb. These are people who risked their life, volunteered their life to serve our country.
Jordan, it's outrageous. It's first of all, it's outrageous that we have this enormous influx. It is then secondarily outrageous that someone would have made a decision to say, I'm a soldier, I'm a veteran. To say to a veteran, you know what, we've been taking care of you, we've been helping you, but we're not going to do that. And we're going to take your place someone who broke the law to get in here. You know, the juxtaposition couldn't be clearer, Jordan. These are people who sacrifice some part of their life to serve America. And the government is making the statement, nope, we value you less than someone that took a risk to themselves and their family to break American sovereignty. I hope that these stories prove to be just not capturing the reality, but you see the video, you see the pictures, and whoever is responsible for this decision, I think we should all make clear that this is so far out of bounds. This is so indecent. This is so fundamentally at odds with our country. But, you know, Jordan, we've talked about the recruiting problem in our military. You want to make it worse? Tell someone who's thinking about signing up to go to an Army recruiting station or a Navy recruiting station, hey, we think illegal immigrants are more important than you as a veteran. You're going to exacerbate the capacity of us to build the fighting force that American people need. It's absolutely tragic to see this taking place in the United States of America, Jordan.
When we're talking about our nation's veterans, it's like the first community of Americans we should be taking care of if they fall on tough times. And whatever they've gone through, whether it's serving our country or whether it's related to their service, as oftentimes it is, that they are dealing with issues that make it tough for them to get back into regular life here at home, and then to kind of kick them to the curb because of the problem of too many illegal immigrants in our country. Now, we've got like gloating going on by the Biden administration because there were only 6,300 encounters a day over the weekend instead of 10,000 that were in the days leading up to the Title 42's expiration. And you've even got the media kind of jumping on this and saying, well, maybe it's working. I mean, those are all record-breaking numbers. The 10,000 was record-breaking. The 6,300 would have been record-breaking before the 10,000. So is it just more evidence that they're totally clueless about why the American people are actually concerned? I don't think they're saying like, well, there were 3,000 less today, so this isn't going to be it's not going to impact me in my city.
I'm only chuckling because it is so ludicrous to think that 6,300 is an improvement. I suppose in some absolute sense it is, but it is still equally devastating to the United States of America. I think, Jordan, about my time when we were working on Remain in Mexico, had we told the president, hey, we're going to be down to 6,300 people coming in tomorrow, I would have been the former Secretary of State. This is beyond what has happened. We shouldn't, Jordan, I should remind all your viewers, all your listeners, we shouldn't for a moment take the Biden storyline that says, hey, this just happens. This has always been going on. It's been a problem for decades. There's nothing we can do. The truth is we know precisely what to do. We know precisely how to stop this problem. We had stopped it for the last 2.5 years of the Trump administration, and they came in and ripped the Band-Aid, made a political decision. You know, you think about these two things we've just been talking about, trading illegal immigrants for homeless veterans in places where they can get a good night's sleep. And second, a decision to say, and also on top of that, there's only 6,300 coming in a day. This shows a disconnectedness with the American people and with reality in a way that really puts American security at risk.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is because they're kind of turning a blind eye to what Texas is doing on their own. Usually they would file lawsuits against that as they did against Arizona, and there's legal precedent that they probably could have here, but maybe they don't want to make a big deal of it to the left, but they are letting a lot of the Texas National Guard do what they would typically argue in federal court they don't have the constitutional or authority to do. That's been interesting to watch. I do want to shift to what's we know is also a serious problem, is not just the numbers and the thousands of people, but the terror watch list, the individuals on the terror watch list. We know over 70 terrorists have been captured. Those were ones that were actually captured. They were not gotaways. And there was another one, again, an Afghani man on the terror watch list apprehended near San Diego this weekend. When you look at the bigger number, that there are more than 1.2 million from CBP, their estimate, 1.2 million known gotaways under the Biden administration. That's under the last three and a half so years. 1.2 million people who they know have entered the country but know nothing else about. And you know that there are terrorists being captured by the CBP. It seems like it puts us at risk, it's not just the fentanyl, it's not just the impact it has on our services and our infrastructure, and that we're not prepared for this many people in these towns and cities, but it also puts us at risk again of terror attacks.
Jordan, I remember the work we were doing to make sure not only that we were catching and returning illegal immigrants to their country of origin, but that we were identifying those who were either on the terror watch list or we had data sets that suggested these people put the United States at risk by the fact that they are connected to folks on the terror list. And now we got over 1 million people. We have no earthly idea. Here's what we can say with almost a certainty. The Afghan that they identified in San Diego, there was an Iranian they identified in Texas, both on the terror watch list, now several dozen. This is tip of the iceberg stuff. And as this border becomes so porous, so wide open, it's not just the random person who comes across, who we happen to have identified to be on the terror watch list. Nations, terrorist groups who want to do harm to America will begin to organize operations, intentionally bringing these people in an organized way to build out networks inside of our country that our local law enforcement and the FBI just don't have the capacity to identify. Real risk, Jordan. Someday, I pray I'm wrong, but someday I fear there'll be an incident and we will look back and say, oh my goodness, how did that team get in here? How did those operators actually get on the ground? And the answer will be they didn't come through an airport. They didn't show a passport. They came into our country when our borders were wide open, and there'll be a real incident where Americans have been harmed, and we'll all look back and recognize how stupid it was, what we're doing today, and then begin to say, oh gosh, I wish we would have done it differently. I hope I'm wrong.
I mean, it's a huge impact on our infrastructure, but I think what always concerns most people is all of the bad actors that make their way through this process because of the amount of people, just the amount of people. So the drug traffickers, the terrorists, the human traffickers, the sex traffickers, the child traffickers. I mean, just so many different kinds of bad actors who look at chaotic situations as they usually do around the world and say, that's where we should go. That's where we should be. And there's no better market and bigger market financially than the U.S. market. And they know that they can sell their drugs to our kids. And the number one killer of 18 to 45-year-olds in the United States is fentanyl, which created in China, but is brought across mainly by our southern border. So I think you're absolutely right. This idea that one day we're going to look back and say, why did we allow this when we knew it was killing so many Americans? I want to turn to one international issue out of Turkey, because a NATO ally that usually when their president is up for re-election doesn't make a ton of news, but this time it has, because President Erdogan is in a runoff with his top opponent, which is it's kind of a lot of different political parties got together, just said they've had enough of Erdogan. And so far, our NATO ally and that president said, that he's going to allow the runoff to move forward. Do you expect anything? I mean, can't predict how the runoff will go down, but it's pretty unique in the history of Erdogan's rule to even get to this point.
Yes, Jordan, pretty unique. Mixed reports on what happened at the ballot box last night. There were reports of fraud incidents where ballot boxes counted too often or not enough. So still remains to be seen precisely, but it does look like there's going to be a runoff. What I hope is the Turkish people get the chance to actually vote in a legitimate way, much like I pray that happens here every election in the United States, and get a chance to express their opinion. The fact that President Erdogan got less than 50% or looks to have in this first election certainly tells you that there's deep dissatisfaction with rampant inflation and the like. And we'll see what happens in the runoff. My hope is that whoever comes out of this begins to be a really good NATO partner, right? Kicking out the Russians, allowing the Swedes to join NATO, and becomes a partner in NATO. Turkey can absolutely do that. These are amazing people with innovation and creativity. We just need their economy to get back on track and their leadership to understand that being firmly planted in the West is the right solution.
Secretary Pompeo, we always appreciate your insight, our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs at the ACLJ.